guys, Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my top 12 reads of 2023. I am sticking to my top 12. On my Patreon, I will have like 15 other books that I want to talk about that did not make this list. So if you're interested in seeing that video, definitely head that way. It's always linked down below. But today I'm here with my top 12. And now when I reflect on 2023, I feel like there was not a lot that just like completely blew me away, which makes me so sad because I was like having a hard time even putting books on this list because I was like, was that really like a top favorite of the year? And they're good romances, but there is one book specifically that is my number one that put me in a bit of, not a slump, because I never get into slumps where I can't read, but like I felt like nothing could ever compare to my feelings to that book, and it just made me sad. In 2024, I need to focus on picking up books that I think will really be books I will be blown away by and that I will love, instead of reading what everybody else is reading. I was watching Christy Reads a lot, and she was talking about how she is trying to step away from reading like every single new release, and I want to do that as well. Stop signing up for so many arcs and really focus on books that I think I'm gonna just wholly love. So these are all books that I was blown away by when I was reading. I couldn't stop thinking about them, and I was just like obsessed with the story, and I might have cried, or I had like a very strong emotional reaction. These are not in any particular order except for number one, so we'll go ahead and get to it. Something I feel like I didn't read enough of in 2023 are angsty romances, because the angstiest ones I read are on this list, and I'm like, why am I not picking up more super angsty romances? That's always what I've loved, but I got kind of swept up in like the cutesy contemporary and missed out on reading my tried and true, I don't know if you'd call it a genre or like subtrope of a book, but one that blew me away that I was shocked by. I devoured this author. She's my most read author of this year, and that is After the Storm by Laura Pavlov. This book, Second Chance, is one of my absolute favorite tropes because I think there's actually quite a few second chance romances on here, but this one, I love it when they are so in love with each other, but like it didn't work out in the past, and now it's very angsty because they're like, oh my god, I really want you, but like maybe we hurt each other in the past, or our lives just like aren't lining up then or now, but like do we sacrifice everything for one another? And I love pining. So this one, our hero and heroine were madly in love in high school, but it was absolutely the right person, wrong time, where they were just not good to each other because of their lives and like where they were and how unhappy they were, so they broke up. And she immediately like jumped into a new relationship. He got someone pregnant. She is not in the picture anymore, so he's a single dad, and she is now getting a divorce. And so her dad has something medical happening, so she comes home to their small town to take care of her dad, and the hero is instantly like, I need to just go ahead and see her to rip off the band-aid, and so like we can just say hi because she's gonna be in town. So he does, and they immediately just want to hang out and be in each other's lives, and she starts falling in love with him again and his daughter, and we have secret tattoos in here, which is one of my favorite like micro tropes, and it was amazing. And the daughter was so fun. The family in here is amazing. It's super small town, but with that angst, and I was obsessed. Like I started this and I was like, Laura has knocked it out of the park. One of my absolute favorite books by her, and I think I read like 8 of her books this year, so it was amazing. Another angsty one, so I did do a video where I chat about my 12 favorite books from each month of the year. So some of these are from that video, but some of them are not, because also I was making that as I was reading them, and I feel like when I reflect on the year at the end of the year, my feelings towards certain books change, because I'm like, I barely remember that book, but I remember I loved it like when I read it in February, but like, is that really still a favorite book of the year? So this one was in that video, and that is The Choice by Ashley Jade. We are supposed to get the second book to this duet soon-ish. I know sometime in 2024 we're supposed to get it. It was supposed to come out like a month after this came out. This is a spin-off from The Words, which I believe was actually in my top of the year last year, maybe. She writes angst so well. So this one is a best friend's girlfriend, and I love it when they're with someone else and they're off limits. So he has his best friend who's basically his foster brother. They both came from very terrible backgrounds, and they're in foster care, and they meet the girl next door, and they both are immediately like so smitten with her, but she meets his best friend first, and she really connects with him on a very deep level over their trauma, and so they start dating, and our hero is so in love with her. Like I probably will have to reread this honestly before the next book comes out, but they like can't stop being around each other and thinking about each other, but she's with this other guy, and we know in the future that they're not together. They're actually, this is like a spin-off from The Words, which is they're in a band. So this is when they're growing up and like kind of starting the band, and we know what happens to them in the future. So I think book 2 is going to be like after The Words takes place, and we can see them trying to be a couple. But this was like their kind of origin story. Oh my god, it was so good. So there's no HEA in here, just to let you know, but it leads to book 2, which will have an HEA. Hasn't come out yet, but so angsty. So good. Another one, so this one I teared up reading. I will not say that I actually like full on cried, but I felt very, very, very emotional and teared up a little bit. There's only one book on this list that I full on sobbed reading, but if I have like a little bit of a tear come, that's a big deal for me. So the next one is Saint by Sierra Simone. I listened to this audiobook and it was on another level. Jacob Morgan was one of the narrators. He is one of my favorite narrators of all time, and this is book 3. You can read it as a standalone, but this is about the Bell brothers, and it really focuses around the fact that their sister unalived herself because she was assaulted by a member of the church, and so they all have very different relationships with the church at this point, and they are all grieving in very different ways. Pretty sure it's Aiden. I don't know character names, but Aiden in here becomes a monk, and he breaks up with the absolute love of his life, Elijah. He becomes a monk, and they actually brew their own beer, and they have this like brewery going on, and Elijah is a reporter, writer, and he is writing a piece on the monks, and him and Aiden are reconnected, and it's so emotional because Aiden has gone through a lot, and it is very sad to see how he is trying to explain what happened to Elijah and how they're going to overcome what all they went through, and reconnecting and trying to figure out how they want to live their lives and how they can find happiness and peace. And it is stunning, amazing. Sierra Simone is one of my absolute favorite writers. She is beautiful at writing, and I love this book so much. I have 2 puppies in front of me now. Darcy came to join too. Okay. The next book I have is Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. This book I was so surprised by because we read it for Ravished by Romance, me and Lacey did, and I knew it was coming out from Forever. I'd seen it around and I wasn't hearing too much about it, but the cover was stunning and I was like, sure, let's do it. And then I was like, I didn't have a lot of time to physically read, so I grabbed the audio. Teddy Hamilton is a narrator. So good. And the romance, it's second chance, it's angsty, it revolves around a wedding, there's some tattoos, and I just was obsessed. The heroine's a wedding planner, the hero's a florist, he's working under his father, they meet in the past, they work around each other a lot, start having this little fling, and then in the present, they have not spoken in years, and one of them broke the other one's heart. We don't know what happened, so it's flashing back between the past and the present, and they're around each other a lot, and it's leading up to this huge wedding because they have to both work for the same client, and that's why they have to talk to each other again, and it is just everything and more. I was obsessed and could not stop listening to this. I vividly remember where I was listening to certain scenes because I was so immersed in this book that I just like could not forget it, and it was so good. I'm obsessed with this hero, one of my favorite heroes of the entire year of what I've ever read, and I could not recommend this book enough. So then we have Elsie Silver. So I could put a couple books on this list, but my favorite, I believe at this point of the Chestnut Spring series, is absolutely because of Theo. Oh my god, who thought a surprise pregnancy book would end up on this list? I don't like that trope. I actively avoid books with that trope. However, I love a secret baby, and I love when they have the child and then the person is like, wait, I have a kid? That's what happens in here. So Winter is definitely not a villain, but she is not presented in a good light in the first book of the series. That is her sister, and in the first book, and like she had things going on. So Winter ends up being kind of misunderstood, and she's definitely very prickly, and Theo is just this sunshine bull rider. He is so full of life, he's so excited about everything, and he really likes Winter. So they actually have a one-night stand, and she gets pregnant, and he goes on tour for bull riding and does not know. He comes back, and she has her baby. He is so in love with this child and so angry that he missed out on the birth and missed out on so many things and so in love with Winter. He is this person who will actually show her love and give her the time and attention and care that she deserves that she doesn't think she's worthy of. And it is amazing. There is one point where he says like, keep the name of the mother of my child out of your mouth or something like that, or like don't talk to the mother of my child that way. And I'm just like, you're perfect. You are perfect. I love this book. Best in the series to me. Then let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the story by Tal Bauer. This book was such a surprise. I did it for my Patreon book club. I had an author guest, Nikki Castle, and she was interested in reading this. This wasn't even on my radar. And I was like, well, it's hockey, it's MM. I love both of those, so let's go for it. And I teared up in this book as well. Like, if I even like have any kind of emotional reaction to it, I will start tearing up, and I had that with this book. This one is so found family, and the romance is just so all-encompassing and emotional. The one hero of this is a veteran player, but he's traded to this team that's pretty much a death sentence to anybody's career. You get traded to this team, your career's over. So he gets traded there, and he's like, well, crap. And he's definitely not a leader. He's definitely just someone who is just part of a team, and he is thrown into the leadership role of this team, and he figures out what is wrong with this team, and it's very, very, very heartbreaking. There are players on this team who are mentally, physically abused, and it's so hard to read, but he is there to really take them under his wing, get rid of the toxicity of the team, and build them from the ground up. And that means showing them a family and support, and they find a family with one another and overcome their trauma together and try to be a good hockey team and like win games. And it's such an underdog story, and he starts falling in love with a rookie on the team who's a little bit older than the other rookies because he played in college first and then made it into the NHL, and he is taking on this kind of leadership role with the younger players, and they end up having to spend a lot of time together and fall in love. And oh my gosh, certain players in here I just wanted to hug, and they're my babies, and this romance was so good. Definitely slow burn, but so good, so emotional, and I loved it. Then let's go ahead and talk about Echoes of You by Catherine Cowles. I love Catherine Cowles, and she released 4 books this year, and this one I think is my favorite. I went back and forth a lot between this one and Shadows of You, because Shadows of You is just like single dad supremacy, and the suspense in that book was so good, but this is Friends to Lovers, and I love a Friends to Lovers romance. And this one, our heroine and hero have been in love with each other literally like since they were kids when they became best friends, and now our heroine though is like, he's never gonna like love me, so she meets someone else and moves to a big city with him, and he ends up being abusive. And so she gets out of that relationship, comes back home to their small town, and Nash is there, and someone is sabotaging them a little bit, coming after them, and they have to figure out who that is, and they fall in love in the process, and it's just so good. I love Nash so much. Like, when I get to see glimpses of him in the rest of the series, I'm obsessed. So for a very good Friends to Lovers romance, read this one, though I think that Lawson's book might be my favorite of the series once that comes out, but overall, Echoes. Of course, Catherine is going to be on this list. You know how obsessed I am with her. I do have a couple that I recently read, and one that I read within the past couple of weeks. I cannot stop thinking about this book. It is Poison Roses by Jamin Eve and Tate James. This is a Why Choose romance where the heroine, she has like a really bad life. Her parents passed away. She has literally like nothing. She's just evicted from her apartment, and she gets this job as a waitress because they're desperate, and she's like, yes, I'll do it, even though it belongs to one of her exes who she doesn't have a good relationship with. His family owns tons of restaurants in the city, so she's like, it's fine, I'll go. And things turned quickly very badly, and she witnesses some murders happening because apparently they're tied to like the mafia or something, and so she is literally on the run for her life, runs into the arms of this guy at a club, and he is like, oh my gosh, like, I'll protect you, like, what do you need? Like, he's very protective, and he's instantly taken in by her, and he wants to save her, and she doesn't recognize him. He happens to be the member of a band that her other ex is a part of, and he hates her guts. He literally named the band after her and sang all these breakup songs about her and hates her guts, but she is now being protected by a different member of the band, and it goes from there, and it is just so fun. Like, the dynamics are so good, and it is Why Choose. I don't know how many people are going to be in there in the end. I just know there's 3 so far, and her ex is going to be one of them, but they have like a lot of issues to work through, and it's so good. And there's lots of action in here too, because someone is literally trying to like come after her, maybe kill her, and she is trying to run away from this family that wants to murder her. So it is so good. I'm obsessed. I can't wait to read the rest of the series. One that came as such a surprise. I don't even remember where I saw it. I just remember I had it on my Kindle Unlimited. I was starting a new ebook and I posted to my Patreon. I was like, hey, here's 5 things I have from Kindle Unlimited. What should I read? And this one won. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't even know that many people knew what this was. It's just a hockey romance. The Puck Secret by G.N. Wright. This is the special edition that Fit Teacher Rachel did, and it's so pretty. I love it. And this one is a new adult hockey romance, which I haven't even been loving new adult lately, but the angst in here, it is a kind of dual romance where they're falling in love through text because she accidentally texts something very personal to what she thinks is her friend's phone number, but it's not. It's the hero's phone number. He is actually a hockey player and her brother's a hockey player, so he's a teammate of her brother's, but he hates both their guts because their dad is the mayor or governor of the town and he had an affair with his mom, and then people found out and he basically like fired the mom from her job because she worked for him and kicked her to the curb, ruined her life, and he gets to go on being still like the mayor, governor, whatever, and live this perfect happy life. And so he hates them for what they did to his mom, and he just has a single mom, and his dad he really doesn't like. He hates her and he lets her know he hates her, but he has this girl texting him that he's really into, and they just start having very emotional text messages to each other. But in real life, they end up hooking up, like a angry we hate each other but we're really attracted to each other hookup, and they're like, okay, I guess we're gonna do this, and it goes from there, and it's so good. And also she has her dad wanting her to marry someone who's awful in this arranged marriage, so there's a lot in here, and it was just so good. I was obsessed. I was like, what am I reading and why is this so good? Definitely read this. I cannot wait to read more from this author. All right, I have 3 books left. Then we have Sky O'Malley by Bertram Small. I originally gave this one 4 stars when I first read it, but I literally could not stop thinking about this book, and it was so good. So I am not doing an extra video. I usually do my favorite books of the year and then my favorite historical romances. I have not read enough historical romances to do that video, which definitely makes me sad, but Sky O'Malley makes me want to read all the old school historical romances again. It got picked up as a show and I am going to fangirl over that when it comes out. Sky O'Malley is so interesting. She is actually, I think, a real person. Samantha from Books of Samantha looked it up and I think she was actually a real person because she had some beef with the queen at the time, but she falls in love with this guy. Okay, but they end up not being able to get married for reasons, and she ends up going on this whirlwind thing where she gets married a bunch of times, and it is crazy. Like, the things that happen in here are insane, and it is so fun to watch. There are some questionable things happening. Like, we do have someone she gets married to is actually in a relationship with their sister, and so some bad things happen to her as well, and there are assaults happening in here, not from the hero towards the heroine. I just want to clarify that, but because you never know with historical romances, but this was so fun. And like, honestly, there were some of her husbands that I was like, you're actually like, why don't you guys end up being together? I didn't even know who I wanted her to be with in the end, but such an interesting romance, and I had a lot of fun reading it. And I'm excited to read book 2 because this was a wild ride. Then we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I was back and forth putting this on this list because now that I've had a lot of time away from it, I don't remember how I felt when I first read this book, but I think that Iron Flame just kind of diminished my enjoyment of this because Iron Flame I gave 3.5 stars to. I didn't love it, but I was giddy reading this book. I do remember that because this is just such an immersive, fun, such a good hero who's obsessed with the heroine, who's misunderstood bad boy kind of thing. We have a training school for dragon riders, and she goes there even though she was supposed to be a scribe. She was supposed to be like this librarian, but now she is being forced by her mom to go to dragon rider school. Lots of different secrets happening and people wanting people dead and people dying, and we got some battles going on, and this one was great. I loved this one, and the romance was great. From the moment they meet, she thinks he wants to kill her, but obviously he doesn't want to. He wants her, but this was so good. I think this is on a lot of people's lists. I don't know how I feel about the series as a whole now, but I did love this one. And my number 1 that I'm still emotionally traumatized by is Manacled. This book is the only book I don't own physically, and I am going to die until I get my hands on a physical book of this. So if you know anybody who binds books, who wants to send a copy my way, let me know. But this is a life-changing book. You will not be the same reader once you read this book. It is Harry Potter fan fiction. I grew up loving the Harry Potter movies, so I definitely think that affected my enjoyment enjoyment of this because I knew the characters so well that the emotions hit me so much harder, and I'm tempted to reread it, but I definitely want to delve into the fan fiction world more than reread this. I read this in a weekend. This is over 1,000 pages and I read it in a weekend. I could not put it down and I sobbed. I sobbed for like an hour after reading this and the next morning when I thought about it. It is a very tragic romance. Our hero and heroine are Hermione and Draco, and it is when the Order has lost the war to Voldemort. The Dark Wizards are basically ruling, and there is now a breeding program where these witches are placed with families and they are to have babies with the husbands because they are having trouble procreating. So Hermione is placed with Draco's family. He is like a really, really high up wizard. I'm blanking on the name of what he is, but he is basically like Voldemort's right-hand man, and so he is like super feared and super dangerous, but it's dark. This is a dark romance, and I just could not get enough of this book. It's definitely slow in some parts. It's a very, very long book, but the romance is just like all-consuming, desperate romance, and the ending absolutely obliterated me. When I tell you, I didn't know if there's going to be an HEA or not. I was super scared. I'd seen different videos of people who had read it, so I even did a TikTok where I was like, this is me before I read Manacled, and then like, this is me after, and I was sobbing. I was a sobbing mess. And I don't cry in books that often. Like, I tear up a little bit, but I don't sob reading books. This was hard. This was so hard to read, and it definitely impacted me because I had connections with these characters, like I said, so it was really hard watching things that had happened in the past because we get present and then we flash back to the past and then we get present again, and it was just stunning the way it was written. The relationships were stunning, and I have not read anything like this. Like, probably one of my favorite books of all time. I can't stop thinking about it. Like, I don't think anything will ever compare, and I don't know what to do with my life now. Like, what do you do when you read the best book, like, of your life? Just like sit and stare at the wall. I don't know. It was amazing. Please read it if you haven't yet. Okay, that was a very long video considering I only talked about 12 books, but those are all my top 12 books of the year, and I recommend you read all of them. I was obsessed with every single one. Let me know if you've read these and what your top books of the year. I would really love to hear what you love this year, and that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.